My insane ex-girlfriend attempted to stab me, then attacked me right in front of the cops. She ended up in a psych ward and kept pleading for my forgiveness, asking me to take her back. Trisha and I had a complicated history. She was my first kiss when I was 15, and then life went its separate ways for us. That kiss was nothing but a distant memory, buried beneath years of growing up and moving forward. At least it was until she found me again. Out of the blue, 20 years later, a message popped up in my inbox from a name I hadn't thought about in years, Trisha. My heart skipped a beat as I read it, wondering what brought her back into my life after all this time. Her message was straightforward, and honestly a little wild. She didn't say hello, didn't ask how I was, just straight up asked if I wanted to take her V-card. I was taken aback, unsure how to respond, but something about the boldness of her request intrigued me. Maybe it was nostalgia or the curiosity of reconnecting with my first kiss, but I said yes. We met up, and things escalated quickly. While we were in the middle of it, she suddenly blurted out that she loved me. It was out of nowhere and threw me off, but instead of being honest with her, I said it back. I didn't know why I said it. Maybe I thought it was what she wanted to hear, or maybe a part of me wanted to believe it too. Afterwards, she asked me to be her boyfriend, and just like that, without thinking, I agreed. I didn't see it then, but I had just set the wheels of chaos in motion. The first few weeks were okay, normal even, but then things started spiraling. We began fighting constantly, breaking up every couple of weeks over the smallest things. Every time I thought it was over, she'd come back and we'd try again. 5 breakups in 3 months, and each time it felt worse. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was getting trapped, stuck in this toxic cycle that neither of us seemed capable of escaping. Then one day I had enough. I broke up with her for real this time. I was exhausted mentally, emotionally. I couldn't keep doing this. She sobbed, begging me not to leave her, but I was firm. I told her it was over and went back to my room, hoping this time would be the last. But just as I was settling in, trying to calm my nerves, I saw a shadow move in the corner of my eye. Before I could process what was happening, Trisha appeared, standing over me with a butcher knife raised high above her head. My blood ran cold. I barely managed to dodge as she swung it down, the blade slamming into my keyboard with a loud crack. She screamed in a blind rage, swinging the knife at me over and over. One of the swings connected, cutting into my arm, and pain shot through me. I don't know how, but I managed to wrestle the knife out of her hands. She collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably, and I held her down, trying to stop her from hurting herself or me any further. I could feel my heart racing, adrenaline pumping through my veins as I fought to keep her calm. I told her I was leaving, and if she tried to stop me, I would call the cops. But instead of calming down, she bolted back into the kitchen and grabbed another knife, this time turning the blade on herself. I panicked. I didn't know what to do, so I dialed 911 and ran out of the house. My hands were shaking as I waited for the police to arrive, unsure of what would happen next. I could hear her screaming inside, and every second felt like an eternity. When the cops finally arrived, I thought it was over, but as I was explaining the situation to them, I saw her running at me from the house. She was screaming, her eyes wide with madness, and before I could react, she tackled me to the ground. Her nails clawed at my face, leaving deep scratches on my skin. The cops stood there, stunned for a moment, before finally pulling her off me and restraining her. "Why are you doing this to me?" she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "I love you. I need you." They managed to get her into the back of the police car, but she pressed her face against the window, staring at me with this look of pure desperation. As they drove away, a heavy weight settled in my chest. I didn't know what was going to happen to her, but I knew I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't live like this. The days after that incident felt like a blur. I tried to forget about everything that had happened, tried to move on with my life, but it wasn't that simple. Then one day I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. "Hello," I answered, half expecting it to be a spam call. "Is this you?" a woman's voice asked. "Yeah, who's this?" "My name is Nurse Daniel," she said. "I'm calling from the hospital. Trisha has been admitted to our psychiatric ward, and she's been asking for you. She won't calm down unless she sees you." My heart sank. Part of me wanted to hang up, to walk away from all of this, but I couldn't. Despite everything that had happened, I still cared about her. I told the nurse I would come by, and I made my way to the hospital, unsure of what I would find. The hospital was cold and sterile, the fluorescent lights casting an eerie glow over the long, empty hallways. The nurse led me through a series of locked doors, each one closing with a heavy, final-sounding thud behind us. My heart raced with every step. When we finally reached Trisha's room, I saw her sitting on the bed, looking so small and fragile, nothing like the woman who had tried to stab me just days before. As soon as she saw me, she jumped up, banging on the window and shouting my name. The nurse opened the door, and Trisha rushed toward me, throwing her arms around me, sobbing into my chest. "I'm so sorry," she cried. "I didn't mean to. Please forgive me." I stood there, unsure of how to react. I wanted to push her away, to leave, but a part of me still wanted to comfort her. I awkwardly patted her back, whispering, it's okay, but it wasn't okay. None of this was okay. She pulled back and looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "I love you," she whispered. "I know I messed up, but I love you so much. Please don't leave me." "Trisha," I said, my voice shaking. "I can't do this. You need help, real help. I can't be the one to save you. You have to save yourself." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I will," she promised. "I'll do whatever it takes. Just please don't give up on me." I didn't know what to say. A part of me wanted to walk away, to leave her to deal with her own demons. But another part of me, the part that still cared about her, couldn't do it. I couldn't abandon her. I won't give up on you, I said finally, but you have to get better. You have to do this for yourself. From that moment on, I started visiting her every week. At first it was hard. She was still upset, still scared, but slowly I began to see a change. She started opening up in therapy, talking about her emotions and her past. She was learning to control her impulses, to manage her anger. For the first time, I felt like there was hope for her. After a few months, she was released from the hospital. I didn't know how to feel about it. On one hand, I was happy that she was getting better, but on the other hand, I was scared. I didn't know if I could trust her again, didn't know if things would ever be normal between us. I want to try again, she said softly when she got out. I know I messed up, but I want to make things right. I want to be with you, the right way this time. I hesitated. I cared about her, but I didn't know if I was ready to go through that kind of turmoil again. Okay, I said finally, but we take it slow, no rushing into things. We started dating again, taking things one step at a time. At first it was good. We went on simple dates, got coffee, and talked about our lives. She was different now, more cautious, more thoughtful. She still had her moments, but she was learning to control her emotions, to not let her impulses take over. But even as things got better, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. There were cracks beneath the surface, fissures that threatened to tear us apart again. One night, we got into a big fight. She was upset that I had gone out with friends without telling her, accusing me of not caring about her. She stormed out of the apartment, leaving me sitting there, questioning everything. When she came back hours later, she was a mess, her eyes red and swollen from crying. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know I overreacted. I just get scared sometimes. Trisha, I said, trying to stay calm. I'm not going anywhere. But you have to trust me. You can't keep doing this. She nodded, wiping away her tears. I know. I'm trying, I really am. We started going to therapy together, trying to work through our issues. It wasn't easy, but we were both committed to making it work. Slowly, we began to rebuild our relationship piece by piece. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Months passed, and for a while, things were good. We moved in together, took the next step in our relationship, and I began to feel like we were finally in a stable place. But the underlying tension was still there, simmering just beneath the surface. Then one day we were sitting in the park, watching the sunset, and she looked at me with a look of determination in her eyes. I love you, she said. I know I'm not perfect, but I want to spend my life with you. I felt a lump in my throat as I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small box. I had been carrying it around for weeks, unsure if I would ever have the courage to use it. I love you too, I said, opening the box to reveal a simple ring. Will you marry me? Her eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment I thought she might say no, but then she nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. We embraced, both of us crying, and for a brief moment I felt like we had won, like we had beaten all the odds. But deep down I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of another chapter in our complicated story. Living together was hard. The good days were filled with love and laughter, but the bad days were a minefield. She was trying so hard, but sometimes the darkness would creep back in, pulling her under, and I was always there trying to pull her back out, but it was exhausting. One night she turned to me, eyes wide and vulnerable. I'm scared, she said. I'm scared of losing you. I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close. I love you, I said. I'm not going anywhere, but we have to keep working on this. We have to keep fighting. And so we did. We fought every day, not against each other, but against the demons that haunted us both. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I wondered if it was all worth it. But in those moments when she would smile at me, when she would reach out and hold my hand, I knew that it was. We were building something together, something fragile, imperfect, but it was ours. As time went on, we learned how to navigate our relationship. We learned how to communicate better, how to trust each other more. Trisha was still far from perfect, and so was I. But we were getting there. Slowly but surely, we were getting there. Years later, as we stood at the altar saying our vows, I realized how far we had come. We had been through hell and back, but we had made it. We were still standing, still fighting, and as I looked into her eyes, I knew that we always would be together. The journey wasn't over. It never would be. But for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I felt like we were finally on the right path, and no matter what the future held, I knew we would face it together.